Errors in the lab. Let's do an experiment. I want you to measure a diameter of the ball with a ruler. I had somebody do this at the beginning of the year, and we have some problems trying to measure it. In each of your lab write-ups, we need to address those problems in these 4 sections of the write-up. First one, identify the sources of the error. Usually I ask you somewhere between 2 and 4 sources. Significant figures on the answer. You are choosing how many significant figures on each of your measurements and your final answer. Identify ways to reduce the error. These are the errors that you listed up here. They have to be the same errors, right? And suggest ways to improve the lab. For the first section, sources of error, let's look at some examples. I might not have read the number correctly. I might have wrote down the number wrong. I might have hit the wrong number on the calculator. I might have forgotten to divide the diameter by 2. These are bad answers. They're showing problems with the procedure, not errors in the measurements. And let me point out that you are designing your procedure, so if you have something wrong with your procedure that's causing bad answers, you're losing points for your procedure and you're losing points for not answering, identifying sources of errors. Errors are not mistakes. They are unavoidable problems that limit the accuracy of your measurements. I'm going to put a star by that. You need to understand what this is. Errors are not mistakes. They are unavoidable problems that limit the accuracy of your measurements. First one that we talked about at the beginning of the year, this is called parallax problem. No matter how I look at the measurement, one of the 2 sides of the ball, if I'm looking straight on here, this side I'm not looking straight on and I have some parallax there. The second source of error is that rulers can only measure to the tens place. So I'm not going to have a measurement that has the hundredths or the thousands place on it. I'm not going to get 5 significant digits out of this. I'm limited to 1 decimal place for my significant figures. These are limitations that you can't help because we're using a ruler to do the measurements. Significant figures is what you do about your sources of error. One way of figuring out your significant figures, if you move your eye back and forth, if I line this side up so I'm looking straight on, then this side's off. If I'm looking straight on this side, then this side's off. So I'm going to move my eye back and forth. Notice how it changes, and that is where I'm going to choose my limiting measurements, 2 significant digits, by the way it changes. Identify ways to reduce the error. How do you improve the accuracy of your measurements for each of the errors you listed? Remember, I'm asking you to find 3 errors, or sometimes 2, or sometimes 4. And we're not allowed to use different equipment. The question is, if you're going to do this lab over again, what would you change to make the measurements more accurate? Try to read more accurately. Ask the teacher if I'm doing it right. Make sure you use the radius, not the diameter in the formula. Try to avoid parallax. Again, these are bad answers. They're showing problems with the procedure. They're not talking about the errors in the measurements. More trials is a way that you deal with accuracy. We talked about this over and over again when we're using stopwatches. The stopwatches are not accurate, so you have to do multiple trials and take the average to get more accuracy. In general, the poorer your equipment is, the more trials you're going to need to get a more accurate answer. Other things we can do, we can alter the procedure. If I put the ball down on the desktop and the ruler down on the desktop, now that I know one side is lined up, I can look straight on this side, and that greatly minimizes the parallax that I have. I can also change the procedure by putting a ruler on top of this one. Where these 2 rulers touch is even going to give me a better measurement than just looking straight on. I'm not changing equipment. All I'm doing is modifying my procedure to make a more accurate measurement. Suggestions to improve the lab. This section is in the conclusion section of your lab. This one you can suggest alternate equipment to use. Get something better to measure it with is the idea that we want, but we can't have this imaginary piece of equipment. You have to specify what piece of equipment we want. So this is a bad answer. It's going along the right lines, but you're not telling me what piece of equipment. This one I showed you several times. The caliper is used for measuring diameters, and the caliper is made to measure very accurately to the hundredths, thousandths, and even 10,000ths place.